of lectures where we introduce the concepts that we use to describe the costs of production for a firm. The first concept that we're going to introduce is the concept of variable cost. The variable cost of production is the cost of hiring the variable input needed to produce a given amount of output. That is, in our case, the amount of money the firm has to spend to hire the labor that it needs to make a given quantity of television sets. In order to find the variable costs for a particular firm, you're going to need two pieces of information. The first piece of information we've already discussed. This is the amount of labor that the firm needs to produce a given quantity of output. And this is an idea about productivity. Remember the total product of the firm? It told us how much labor we needed to produce a given quantity of televisions. So the first piece of information you need is a piece of technological information. How much labor do we need to hire to produce a given quantity of television sets? The second piece of information that you need is a piece of economic information. That is, how much do you have to pay to get a unit of labor? In other words, what is the wage rate that you must pay your workers in order to get them to work for you, assembling television sets? Once you know how many workers you need and what you have to pay each one of them, then you've got the variable cost, or the labor cost of producing a given quantity of television sets. Let's suppose, for the sake of our example, that the wage for a television set assembly worker is $1,000 per week. That means every time a firm hires another television assembly worker, they've got to pay that laborer $1,000 per week. Let's now use that information to find the variable cost of producing certain quantities of television sets. Go back to the chart that we began with. This chart describes the production possibilities of the firm. That is, how many television sets a certain number of workers can assemble in a week. What we'll do now is take the number of workers in each case and multiply by the wage that must be paid those workers to get the total amount of money the firm has to spend on labor to produce output. For instance, if you hire one worker, you've got to pay that worker $1,000 a week for a total of $1,000. That's the variable cost of producing two television sets. Because after all, one worker can produce two television sets. That means $1,000 is the labor bill for turning out those two television sets. If you hire two workers, you can produce 10 television sets. And since each of those workers will cost you $1,000 per week, the variable cost of producing 10 television sets is $2,000. Keep going. To produce 30 television sets, you need to hire 3 workers. That's $3,000 a week. To produce 40 television sets, you have to hire 4 workers. That's $4,000 per week, and so forth. All of the numbers in this column are calculated by multiplying the number of workers you need by the wage of $1,000 to get the variable cost of producing a given quantity of television sets. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what's it going to cost us to produce 35 television sets a week? Well, we can't say for sure because we don't have enough detailed information here to answer that question, but we know that it takes between 3 and 4 full-time workers per week to produce 35 television sets. So the number lies somewhere in between those two, which means the variable cost will be somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. Again, you can imagine a fractional number of workers to give you a particular number of television sets and then multiply that by $1,000 per week to get the variable cost. Once again, the variable cost is simply total spending on the variable input needed to produce a given volume of output. What we'll do next is draw a picture of this concept.